Welcome to Girl on the Gov, the podcast,
where our goal is to make politics more accessible and less intimidating.
The show features an interview with an expert in the political field, walking us through the many cues we have about politics, civics, government, and more.
By providing civic education in the places we are, on our phones, and in the language we speak. And yes, we know we say like a lot.
It's kind of the point, because politics needed a rebrand. Welcome back to Girl on the Gov, the podcast. Happy Wednesday. We have a really, I think, fun episode for everybody today.
So fun.
And I think one that's very interesting for everyone.
Oh, totally. It's like the behind the scenes dream.
I loved it.
Speaking of which, we actually, with our guest, Emily, we did a behind the scenes Instagram feature as well. So do a little scroll, make sure you're following at Girl on the Gov and check out her behind the scenes feature. And then also, obviously, continue listening to this episode where we interview our friend Emily, who's a White House correspondent, on what that actually means and what the behind the scenes tea looks like in the press room. It's tea.
It's definitely all the dynamics I've always been so curious about. So I think you guys will love it. But unfortunately,
sorry, before we get into bad news bears, I literally just hold my hand in the air at all times. It's just it's you know how some people have dino arms? Yeah. I just have rogue hand in air.
I'm always I don't know what to do with my hands girly as well.
Yeah,
that's why I like having this, just my little comfort blanket.
I would hold mine, but
another plug.
Tell me that I was just moving my mic too much.
Well, you're not allowed to hold your microphone. Fair. I think we officially nailed that down. Samantha has a sitting mic. I have one in my hands, which I think it's the best for everyone involved.
Agreed. It is. Yeah.
And
mostly
another, I guess, plug to go watch on YouTube and go subscribe.
Totally. Yeah. Because everyone and their mother has told me, when we first got those mics, the in-hand mics,
the
that
vibrators.
They look like vibrators. And all my friends to this day are so you guys popping out the vibes for your episode today? And I'm honestly, maybe. You never know what happens around here. So
yeah, honestly, vibrator brands everywhere. Sponsor us.
Side note to that, sorry, really delaying this moment. I have seen so much SpawnCon from vibrator brands, across every niche. I've seen Annie Wu does it, Kate Galvin.
A lot of influencers have stepped into the space.
What the hell is her name? I can literally see her profile, whatever, but it's everyone across.
I think Hannah Berner has.
Spectrum. Oh, totally. It's just so interesting.
It's anyone who talks about sex, any sex positive influencer, they're oh my God, you're a gal.
They must be paying a pretty penny too, because I feel
should.
I mean, they should be for sure, and all brands should be hint, nod, nod. But I'm just saying, it gives big budget. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, we love to see that for them.
We do. What we don't love to see is this news we have to get into.
Yes, some unfortunate news to kick off this episode, but it's something we obviously can't not talk about because there have been dozens of mass shootings in 2023 so far, just in this month of January. So there was actually a mass shooting near a youth center in Allentown, Pennsylvania. There's one at a Subway restaurant in Durham, North Carolina. Another took place behind a beer hall in Oklahoma City. Another at a strip club outside of Columbus, Ohio. 2 mass shootings ended parties in different Florida cities. And that was just on New Year's Day. So, yeah, by the start of the 4th week in January, the tally had grown to include at least 39 separate shootings in which 4 or more people were injured or killed, according to the Gun Violence Archive, outlining a striking explosion of violence across a range of sites in nearly every corner of the nation that killed at least 69 people. And the deadliest shooting so far took place this last weekend in Monterey Park, California, a city with a thriving Asian American community where a gunman killed 11 people and wounded 9 others inside a popular ballroom dance hall. The authorities said the gunman, who may have targeted his victims and who later killed himself, was a 72-year-old man. Then on Monday came another deadly mass shooting in California. A gunman who the authorities say was a 67-year-old man, killed 7 people and seriously wounded at least 1 other person in Half Moon Bay, just south of San Francisco. The frequency of mass shootings and the variety of places in which they now take place, offices, schools, nail salons, houses of worship, grocery stores, and restaurants, contributes to the sense prevalent across America that such gun violence could break out at any moment, anywhere. It fuels calls for gun control, just as certainly as it does the purchase of more and more guns. Public shooting sprees rivet the nation, but can also have the effect of normalizing violence. Criminologists say the prevalence of mass shootings is brought about in part by the easy access to so many weapons, a unique feature of the United States, as well as by a copycat effect, aka the more we don't do anything about this, the more it's going to happen, the more it has been happening. And I would just like, this is really the issue for me that just I feel so helpless over. Like, climate change, dark, scary, but I feel like we've made some strides and there's been, some effort in policy and different things to combat it. But this issue is, I seriously see no hope in sight. I see no light. I see no action from our leaders in this country. And it's just really disheartening to sit here and see all of this happening and know that there's not going to be any leadership around it.
Yeah, I think it's chilling. I think too, one of the things that always gets poked at with this, which I'll say is honestly almost a daily occurrence because we're continually having mass casualty events. And even if they're not mass casualty, which means that they have to be more than 4 people, right? So the incident yesterday in Iowa where 3 people were killed doesn't count as a mass shooting. That's insane to me. But regardless, in terms of how these numbers go, is that we have more state laws coming into play. So for example, Illinois just passed a ban on assault weapons, which is fantastic. The problem though, is that if there's states next to it that allow for these guns, that not only allow for them to be sold, but don't have red flag laws, don't have all of these other protections, it really lessens the ability for the laws in the states that do have them to actually work. Because it means someone can just hop over the border and drive to a state adjacent that has laxer laws, purchase the guns that they are intending to purchase, and drive right over the line and proceed to carry out whatever violence they have on their mind. So this is why we get excited about state laws in the sense of, yes, they are steps in the right direction, and state laws and local laws can make a difference. And I don't want anyone to think that they don't have an ability to impact your surrounding area, but we need federal legislation. This needs to be something that happens across every single state that stops the ability from guns traveling across different states, from people that should not have firearms, specifically mass casualty firearms like assault weapons, to be in the hands of anyone outside of, quite honestly, the military. There's, to me, and that's what's so frustrating about also this continual gun debate, is no one needs to have an assault weapon. I don't care what person that enjoys going to go hunting thinks that using an assault weapon to shoot.
You're a pussy if you can't shoot a deer with a just regular gun. Why do you need an assault weapon?
And no skill. Absolutely no skill.
No skill.
It's not to mention, if anyone's looked at any of the reports of these really tragic mass casualty events with assault weapons, seeing that part of the way in which doctors cannot save people is because the actual bullets,
amount of bullets,
implode in people, and destroy the organs, destroy the muscle tissue, all these different things. So the defense of, oh, I'm using it to hunt XYZ. Well, what meat are you getting from that? Let me tell you. What meat?
Well, yeah. And then again, also you're
about it, but it's just the reality. That's not a hunting weapon.
No,
I don't care what anyone says.
The argument around your Second Amendment to protect yourself from the government will whoop your ass in 5 seconds. You know the kind of weapons we have in our government? You think your couple assault weapons are going to do shit? Imagine. And it's just all of it doesn't make sense, especially given that we are living in this time now where this type of senseless violence is happening so regularly. It's on the tops of everyone's mind everywhere they go. Totally. And it's gotten so bad. And the fact that it's I would love if everyone in a perfect world could have their gun to protect themselves. We don't live in that world. We're way past that now, and it's just so frustrating and sad and disappointing that like we are still in this place. And again, like I don't see the light as far as solutions.
I struggle to see it either. And I think it also is one of those things where this gun issue is connected to so many other things in our society right now, like rise in domestic violence, the like issues of
suicide.
Like kids, right, suicide, kids bringing guns to school in general. Like this is so pervasive in so many ways. And the only thing that I think is going to actually stop this is federal legislation in conjunction with state legislation. But I also think like New Zealand, for example, they have a mass shooting and they ban assault weapons. Like there is such this issue in the US of this protection of guns over people, and that somehow guns seem to be more valuable. I'm all for protecting oneself. I've been followed more times than I can count. I've almost been kidnapped twice. Like I literally, like I get it, but this isn't
small. She needs the protection.
I'm grabbable.
She's willing to hand over some protections for herself in order to protect the greater good. Because at the end of the day, these guns are more often killing us than protecting us. And that's
and you know what actually proves that point is the fact that the hero that wrestled one of the guns away from the Monterey Park shooter, he didn't have a gun. He didn't shoot the bad guy. No, he wrestled the gun out of him and disarmed him. That's the reality.
Look at Uvalde.
Exactly. So
yeah, it's
long story short, this is just a fortunate pattern. And one more comparison before I say like what the action is in a sense is that like we've seen so many problems pop up across our world, right? Like a chemical in a certain food that poisons us and we decide we're going to ban that. That shouldn't be allowed. Let's see, we're driving and we're noticing that there's a lot of car deaths. We get seatbelts and airbags. Like we come up with solutions and we outlaw the things that put us in harm's way. And we will not get out of our own way and protect ourselves.
Killer in our country.
Especially with young people.
So it's just, it's sick.
Absolutely
but
sick and twisted.
Yes, take action. There are things we can do. And I think as helpless as we feel, it's important to not take your foot off the gas and make sure that we are continuing to take action even as we feel so helpless when these stories break. So we have the Senate switchboard number you can call to reach out to your senators and really all the senators if you want to tell them to take action on gun reform. And the other thing I did want to say as well is that yesterday at the Golden Gate Bridge press conference, they had a little like press moment where some people asked questions, and everyone there also who spoke talked about Monterey Park. This was right before the Half Moon Bay shooting, and talking about supporting California through these hard times with the storms, with the guns, and how President Biden is all for this assault weapons ban. I'm just also so on the page of like, I know executive orders aren't as powerful, but like I said this like last year, I think it was when Uvalde happened. I was like, just do it and see what happens. I know he's probably going to get sued or whatever. It'll go to the courts, but do something, make a stance. And obviously like these are the things that due to a lot of red tape and legal shit sometimes can't actually come to fruition as far as like seeing the solution in action, but like do something. Executive order, assault weapons ban, do it.
Yeah. Speaking of which, just switching back to the Senate switchboard, which is 202-224-3121, is specifically ask for your representative to pass an assault weapons ban. The thing that works best here is to say something specific. So
yeah. And do not stop with your local and state reps as well. The more we can obviously get these laws on every state level, then, that obviously does so much and helps so much. So also reach out to your reps there and continue the fight. But moving on, I really wanted to get your thoughts on this little scenario. We talked about this. I had a
feeling when I woke up this morning, I was like, Patty's totally going to bring this up. I know it.
Well, yeah, we talked about it a little bit yesterday. Democratic Rep Ruben Gallego said he's running for the Senate in Arizona. We talked about this yesterday. But the DSCC has chimed in because basically his entrance into this Arizona race against Kyrsten Sinema has like paralyzed Democratic leaders apparently. And they, aren't sure yet who they're going to support because Kyrsten Sinema is the incumbent. She is now an independent though, so she's not really a Democrat. So it's kind of like the answer is right there. She's not your Democratic candidate. But obviously incumbents are easier to reelect sometimes. So whatever. But few Democrats told Punchbowl last night that whether they favor backing the eventual Democratic nominee or incumbent Senator Kyrsten Sinema, who left the party in December. Their responses were pretty consistent. It's too early to say. But the DSCC chair, Gary Peters, said, "We haven't been thinking about that. That's down the road. Senator Sinema is a friend of mine, and I don't know if she's planning on running or what her intentions are. I don't want to get out in front of what she wants to do." Okay. You're definitely thinking about it. You've been thinking about it. It's your literal entire job. This is going to be the biggest race. Like, you're thinking about it.
Or at least one of that is for sure. I don't blame them for their response. I don't. They're in a really tricky situation politically in this because it's a little bit, it's either a win-win or a lose-lose. In this design, you could have a Kyrsten Sinema, a Ruben Gallego, and a Carrie Lake race. And it becomes one of those scenarios of, okay, well, who's going to win? And I don't think they know who is going to win that yet. And I don't think they want to speak out of turn with that. And I don't disagree with them. I do think that they are better off seeing these cards unfold a little bit and then jumping in. I think they probably have an idea as to what their plan is in both directions. Like if Kyrsten Sinema says, yes, I'm running again for Senate, I guarantee you they already know what their plan is. But in not showing their cards, I think they're smart in this. I really do. Do I think it's a little annoying as someone that wants to know everything? Yeah, sure. But I think it's a smart move.
Like they could have said that without saying, we're not thinking about that. Yes, you are.
Because obviously we know you are.
Just nix that
your
part
entire thing is fundraising for Senate races. Like that's the whole shtick. Yeah. But I think they could have been a little more transparent.
It's going to be so interesting to see where they go on this because it's one of those classic examples of like the establishment Democratic Party or like both parties, just how they function. The fact that they would go with Sinema potentially over Ruben because he's also like Democratic, he's pretty progressive. He's young, like he's not as establishment. And so the fact that but because Sinema is establishment, they would go with her even though she's now independent. It's just like so classic.
But here's the thing is it's not that out of whack with them. Like think about like Bernie Sanders, who is like consistently like always caucuses with the Dems. And then like also then campaigns for Democrats. And then you have like Angus King in Maine, who's kind of like a similar but different type of independent from Kyrsten Sinema in the sense that there are large areas of Maine that are pretty Republican, and that sort of undertone definitely sets the stage for certain things.
And Arizona's been such a mixed bag as far as like where are they going to land. So it's going to be a tricky one to figure out who to back.
Look, I don't think they're going to say anything until Sinema drops whatever her bomb is. And I think they're smart for that.
Yeah. And I wonder if they're going to have any sway over what she decides. And they're going to be like, listen, we can't have you jump ship yet. But
she doesn't seem like someone that takes like advice from anyone.
But she loves attention. And if someone offers her something, she gonna take it.
That is definitely fair. I mean,
we've seen that.
I also, in reading both Punchbowl's newsletter and the Hill's newsletter, talking about these bits this morning, it made me feel like there's definitely a piece of this puzzle that they know and we don't.
Always.
Which fair, always. Yeah. But like, especially with the way that like Punchbowls is written, like maybe now like reread it, like I got this feeling like it was interesting. Like I know we have our theory of the presidential run, but the way it's written, again, I could be wrong. And it's also could be like their own bias, right? But like it gives to me this way of pointing, it's definitely a Senate run, not a presidential. and they know
Really?
something.
I kind of
That's
thought
how I
maybe
read
the
it.
opposite.
Interesting. I don't know. I mean,
I
we'll
think
see. We will see. That is
I think
for
she's definitely, those are her options. And I think
totally.
that's not something the public technically knows that she's thinking about. It's everyone's theory. But I think behind closed doors, that is the two options that she's going in between.
And I think even if she decides I'm going to run again as an independent this time for Senate, I think, and decides to skip the presidential for 2024, I think she'll put her hat in the ring in the next time too for president, for sure. She's definitely running for president at some point. I just don't know if it's this next moment, which I still think it is.
I think it is.
But I also think if it's not, it's happening.
Her switch was so baffling to me, just as far as like, you really did that. That's crazy. Because it's also just like her and Manchin, in that split Senate, were just the center of attention always. Democrats take a bigger control in 2022. She flips because God forbid she's, part of the pack and doesn't get to, get all that attention. And then on top of it, it's like that also would set her up for an independent run in a presidential election. So it's like she wants to stay in the spotlight for some reason. I think we know what that reason is.
Totally. I'll also be curious to see what happens with Manchin. He, like, the talk of the town right now is like, is he going to retire? Is John Tester of Montana going to retire? I really hope John Tester doesn't, because I'm kind of obsessed with him. And he has like this like mullet vibe, and I'm obsessed with it. So
I do wonder what Manchin's going to do. He's been so quiet since the Senate has.
Yeah. I did see an article that
they've had such different reactions.
Yeah. But like this article, and it was like talking about like whether he would run for president as part of like another party, which I was like, I definitely need to read this just out of curiosity.
I don't see as much energy around him. That I could honestly see him retiring, but like also given like maybe he just wanted to go out on a bang of having, being the real.
But I also don't know who
the real swing vote during that big
him.
legislative session.
True.
Well, no, some West Virginia.
Like I don't see. I'm going to have to do some West Virginia digging. And if you are one of our West Virginia listeners, let us know. I do know like at the state level, and I'm now blanking on the family name, there are a few families that are like very top of the mound in West Virginia politically. And they all seem to always
see a John Fetterman type candidate coming out I would love West Virginia. I think that would fit perfectly. So if there's.
But I just don't know if the political organization is so.
Yeah, like I don't know if there's someone who's already, in the House or whatever, but I mean, it could be like a John Fetterman type situation.
It's fair.
Anyways, let's get into this episode, shall we?
We shall. Well, we kind of like already like preemptively did a little intro. So let's just get into it. Let's get into that White House correspondent tea. So without further ado, here's Emily.
We're so excited to chat. And for background for everyone, you are a White House correspondent. Can you tell us how you got into this role? I mean, this is literally like out of West Wing. So we got to know all the deets here.
Totally. So basically, I've always wanted to be a broadcaster. We're starting from the beginning.
Yeah, I love it.
Always wanted to be a broadcaster. My dad is a sports broadcaster, so I watched him growing up, and ever since I can remember, since I was 9, that was what I wanted to do. So I did like some TV stuff in high school, and then went to Syracuse University for college and majored in broadcast and digital journalism. Thought I wanted to do sports like my dad, and I worked for NFL Films a year after graduation, and I had an awesome experience there, had some success and loved it. And then COVID hit and everything changed. And I've always been really like socially conscious, I guess, or like public policy, political science, politics. Like I've always been interested in that stuff just because like my family likes talking about that kind of thing. And when George Floyd was murdered, that was like a big game changer for me, because I was like, there's totally something to be said for like entertaining people through sports. But for me personally, I did not feel fulfilled doing that. So decided to switch it up went and got my master's in political science with the plan to go to law school. And I graduate in May from my political science program. Very exciting. And I'm taking my graduation pictures, found this random media company. And the person who was taking my pictures ended up being my like co-director for a program that we run through the White House situation, which I can get into later. But he has a whole media company and he was asking what I wanted to do with my life. I was telling him, and he literally offered me a job. He's like, oh my God, that sounds perfect for what I do. Like I do politics and news and stuff like that. And I actually work at the White House. Like I do journalism for my company through the White House. And you sound like you'd be a great fit. Like, want to do it? It's like, yeah, sign me up right now. Like I'll drop everything. I won't do anything this summer. Like, so that it was just like fate, I guess. But yeah, that's how I got into it. And it's now been a while, not a year yet, but it's still kind of new.
But you are like in the heat of everything. Being a White House correspondent would just be crazy on its own. But you're also the youngest White House correspondent, which is fucking sick, first of all. But what is that like? I mean, just some of the characters we know of that are in the press room pretty often. Like you're in there with the Fox News and the CNNs of the world. Like, tell us about this experience. Maybe even like first time you were in there versus like now even.
Totally. So yeah, it's crazy that I am so young. I still feel like a kid being in there just because these people have had such expansive experience just in news in general and broadcasting. But the first time I went in there, it was a very slow day. Luckily, it was a slow day in June. And I got like the full tour, got to see the briefing room for the first time, which was like, oh my God, that was just wild. Yeah. There was no press briefing that day. So luckily, like not a lot of the correspondents were around because that really would have like sent me over the edge.
Yeah. You're like one step at a time, please.
Yeah, literally. But it was crazy meeting everybody. I was like tiptoeing around, but I got to meet like on that first day, I did get to meet Caitlin Collins, Kelly O'Donnell, Peter Ducey might have been in, and Press Secretary John Pierre's former chief of staff, I believe, was there. But it was her literal last day. So I got to meet her really quick. But now, I don't know, it's so bizarre to me that like it was just so normalized, like so quickly to go in there, which I never like obviously forget how lucky I am to be in there every day. But I don't know, just like walking through the gates is just kind of like, walk through Secret Service. Like it just kind of is normal now, but it is still crazy to get to watch all of these like really accomplished people work too day to day and just observe them.
Yeah. And be in the room with them. That's like just so cool. And Sam and I were just there and like just walked around the White House and we were even like, oh my God. But I was like, what would it take to just walk through those gates with Secret Service?
Maddie was scheming.
Right.
Oh, also there were some cute ones and I was like,
I was going to say, she did flirt with a very particularly cute blonde one. If you're listening to this, random Secret Service, FBI, whatever guy, you're at the front, you're blonde, and Madison Blue Medved is interested. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Literally,
Sam.
The Secret Service that work there, like they're like the creme de la creme. They're just like the best. Look, I swear they do it on purpose. They're like,
no, yeah, we've
like
seen
intimidating.
we were Sam and I were talking about it, like all the TikToks where it's like people get videos of Joe Biden or whatever, and everyone in the comments are like, wait, that Secret Service guy though. Like we talk about that.
Yeah, it's so funny. I like, especially like because you can tell if the president's in like the Oval Office if they're right when you walk in. There's like a double door situation and you can tell when the president's in because a Marine is standing outside, and like it's just so like they always pick like a really good looking Marine to stand outside.
That is what we call marketing. Great marketing.
Literally.
Yeah. The public facing Secret Service guys.
And they are really nice going through.
I was like, where are those guys on Hinge, or is there a special? Are they Raya? Like which dating app are they on?
Definitely
in DC.
Raya. They're like they definitely think they have status, I feel like.
For sure.
Love it.
That is like literally, I can't. But that is one of those things that is interesting too, of like any place like you work or, you go on a day-to-day basis, like it becomes normal to you.
Yeah.
Like even something you're like, oh my God, I would have been like starstruck like 3 months ago doing or seeing. And then like literally like a few months later, you're like, oh yeah, just part of my day, part of my week, whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like there's random things that like that's happened to us with too, where it's like a conversation and like maybe it's like the level that person is at or something like that. And in that moment, it's like a little starstruck, like, cannot believe we're talking with so-and-so.
Yeah.
And then a few months later, we're like, oh yeah, we're texting with them, blah, blah, blah. Don't even think like anything of it. It's so weird how life works with that. But
it is. It is.
Yeah.
But as long as like you don't forget like how lucky you are, like that's like I feel like then it's fine. Then let it be normalized because it makes it easier to do your job. So
yeah, totally. Well, we're gonna dive into your experience further, but we do want to like kind of get into our I Have a Stupid Question segment, obviously, because that's a requirement on the show, and get into like just this role and press secretaries, especially around and in the White House. So to kick it off what is the role of a White House press secretary?
So the press secretary is basically the person who communicates with the media directly and basically speaks on behalf of the administration so that the people can get the information that they need. So yeah, she meets with the president and everybody throughout the administration, is briefed on things herself on what's going on, and then prepares that for the media and then lets the media ask away. And not to say that like you can't ask the president questions himself or people in the administration, but it's just a more streamlined workflow, I guess, to have a dedicated person, obviously, to handle that. So that's basically what she does, which is pretty cool.
Have all the bucketed answers for the Doug.
Yes.
I was going to say Doug Ducey, but it's Peter Ducey. I get him.
Oh my God. There's just
same realm, technically.
Yeah, exactly.
Are they related?
I don't know.
Like, I'm just saying that'd be an interesting family tree.
Yeah, that's true.
Peter Ducey is the Fox News correspondent, everyone, just in case you're curious. Biden and him have had some funny words together. Biden just in his little clapbacks. Again, we'll get into that in a second. I want to know any of your experience with that. But
Totally. But nonetheless, speaking of these press briefings, press secretary, how many reporters are allowed in these briefings? How does that work?
So everybody, they distribute credentials day to day and also permanently. So I have a permanent press pass called a hard pass. Previously, before I went through that whole process, I filled out I think it's 8 to 12 hours before you're going to be on campus that you're going to be there. So they kind of, I think, determine how many people will fit in the West Wing on a certain day. And that's how they do their credentialing. But that's more behind the scenes. So I'm more familiar with just sitting in the briefing room. So on a busy briefing day, every seat will be filled in the room and they're assigned seats. So each outlet has, not every outlet, but the big outlets have seats that are assigned to them. And usually we don't have one because we're a smaller media company online, but if there's one open, I will definitely grab it because it's easier acoustically. It's weird. It's easier to hear if you're sitting because there's speakers directly above each row, and the microphones too. So you have microphones in that space, where the seats are. And then obviously Korean has microphones as well. So it's a lot better if you're sitting down. If there's people there that don't have seats, you can kind of try and find a spot along the walls or in the back, but you don't want to block the cameras because they're in the back of the room. So it's not a set number, but
yeah, it's kind of tricky to navigate.
Totally. Yeah, it is. And it's a little scary because you obviously don't want to get in the way of anybody or the photojournalists who are able to roam. They're not restricted to one spot, whereas the journalists are. But yeah, it can get packed in there. It's a pretty small room, which was surprising to me when I first saw it, how small it actually is. So
that is interesting. You would think that they would dedicate a larger space to that.
Right. And it looks huge.
I mean,
on TV. It's not.
Yeah. I mean,
that is so wild. Because you would think too, as news continues to evolve, and maybe this is something that catches up in a few years or something like that, or they get stuck in tradition. I don't know. But the more online outlets that come about and the more that political influencers are a part of the scene and podcasters and all that, there are going to be more and more people that need to be at these briefings, or at least specific ones. So you would think they'd be expansion plan.
Yeah. But they probably also limiting who gets to, show up and knowing what kind of questions are going to be asked from certain people, and how politics just loves the status quo of everything. But I was also curious, kind of along that same line, do you know how to get a temporary pass? Like, is that near impossible, or like, how does that usually work?
It's definitely not impossible. I never like personally did it. My boss slash co-director usually did that for me, but they have a form, but I don't know, like anybody has to be able to access it because like we're supposed to have a free and fair, open media, everything like that.
Yeah.
Democracy.
The people's house.
Yes, the people's house. So you have to be able to have access to it, but yeah, I don't know how you get the form exactly, but there is a form and like, it's not like I feel like they typically don't deny. Like if you have a good reason to be there, you're a legitimate like journalist, then you're typically
Like I wonder if the
credentialed,
form
but-
like is like sent to people to then fill out and then get approved, or if it's just like publicly available to fill the form out. Do you know that?
Typically we request it. So like at the beginning of each week, because we have students that we have to do this for. We teach like 10 students. Typically at the beginning of the week, we'll email the press office, the White House press office, and say like, hey, can you send over the form for us for the week? Because it changes every week. And they send it to us, but we have to go looking for it. So I guess that's how it works. Because also like the major outlets, those people are permanently credentialed, so they're not doing it. So it is more for the like smaller media companies or people who are doing something special there that have to like go looking for it. Yeah.
Interesting. All of like the ways in which Maddie's going to try and get herself to this hottie at the front gate. This is
Yeah, I was like, am I asking this question for our listeners or for us?
Honestly, both. It's
a little bit of both. Yeah. But ultimately that's going to be for our listeners, you know?
Totally.
So
I
all
love how
just-
this is all just wrapped in a nice package. It's
of course.
wow.
I'm
Merry
always thinking
Christmas
about
to us all.
everyone. Yeah.
Exactly.
So generous.
Yeah,
Oh my
I
God.
know.
Okay.
I'm pretty
well,
selfless. Yeah.
Lord have mercy. Okay. Well, next question is, what does it mean for someone to be a part of the press pool? Like, what is that term?
So the press pool it's actually funny because I made a video about this literally way back when, because somebody asked me like what the purpose was. Oh, they asked me what the purpose was to have like a dedicated area for the press in the White House. They were like, that's weird. And that's why I make like TikToks and stuff, because I want people to understand how this works, like the White House situation and the press and everything like that. So I did some digging, and basically the press pool is the group of reporters, photojournalists that follow the president around literally everywhere he goes. Yeah, they are constantly following him, and they send updates to the rest of the media corps, the press corps, giving them updates on what he's doing. Like literally, like POTUS got in the car. POTUS was wearing a blazer with a blue tie. The weather is beautiful
Like paparazzi.
out. Somebody shouted. Yeah, literally paparazzi. So I don't know how you get in the press pool. Like I wouldn't be in it. It's more like Bloomberg, CNN, Washington Post, like New York Times. Those big outlets will be in the press pool, and they rotate. I think it's they rotate daily, I believe. And the White House Correspondents Association creates those rotations, I believe, if not the White House press office. But the point of it is that as Americans who do live in a democracy, we need to know we have to have absolute transparency and know exactly what he's doing at all times, especially in an era where that is possible. Like we can't allow ourselves to not have that. And it ties into like checks and balances. Like I like to think of it like, obviously we have checks and balances throughout the three branches. The fourth branch, which is the people, also has to kind of have a hand in that as well and be checking the rest of the branches at the same time, so that we're getting what we want for ourselves. Totally. Not to sound selfish or anything, but that is the point of the press pool. And like also, so FLOTUS has press pool, vice president. Like usually they'll send a pooler with one of the four, like POTUS, BPOTUS, FLOTUS, and second gentleman. So
I love all the acronyms. I love FLOTUS.
I know, me too.
Giving White
so
Lotus.
Cute. It's giving a whole moment. Also, I have not watched White Lotus, so I'm so out of the social pop culture vibe. I'll watch it at some point. I just am like, I'm so behind in the conversation that I just can't even start. I'm like, I'll watch this by myself after all of this Michigas is done because I'm just like
That's
overwhelmed.
fair. That's
But
fair.
I really feel like the Bidens, the second families, like any president in like the last, I don't know, few terms has a lot in common with reality stars. Like someone that is literally like on, I don't know, Summer House, Winter House, whatever, The Bachelor. They're just getting followed around with cameras all day.
Yeah.
Totally.
And granted, very different context, but just that idea of almost like you stop even really seeing the cameras and, you know, it's just sort of a part of your daily routine. I feel like they'd have so much to chat about. And then things get edited in certain ways and through certain POVs that are different than sometimes the reality. I'm just saying.
Parallels.
That is,
I'm bringing it together, guys.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know.
Celebrity too. It's like, it's interesting. But yeah, it's interesting too, like how, though that aspect is like vital to democracy, you're like, oh, well, like that's kind of like existential.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Which is cool. But okay, well, moving forward, what can you run us through what a typical day is like as a correspondent? I know everyone can go check out our Instagram with you, where you like literally write it out for us and show us pictures. But yeah, can you kind of explain that typical day run through of like when you are reporting at the White House?
Totally. Yes. So typically I'll get there at the White House pretty early. It depends on what's going on that day. So we get like from the White House press office a daily guidance for the president and for the four people, the POTUS, all of them. We get the guidance the day before and it tells us what he's going to be doing that day. So usually the plans are pretty last minute, but I typically get there pretty early. I'd say on average, like 8 a.m., drop my stuff, go to Starbucks across the street because I got to live, obviously. Then I get back and I'll work on either editing my own writing or the students' writing that I have, or I will be planning questions for the press briefing. If there's an event, I'll be at the event, or I will be planning content for the day. I'd say the most like laborious thing to do would be writing the questions for the press briefing because nothing makes me panic more than like, it's weird. For somebody who loves like public speaking, talking to people, I hate raising my hand. Like, I don't know what it is. It's the worst. So that's like
unfortunately a symptom of being a woman in society, but
absolutely. So yeah, that's like the most stressful thing that I do. Then after that, like I'll run and grab some lunch, film some stand-ups, film content for TikTok. Sometimes I go live. One time I went live, like getting ready, putting my makeup on at the White House, which was kind of fun. I was like, I wonder if anybody has gone live on social media from in here. Yeah, that was really fun.
Like, get ready with me at the White House. Are you joking?
Yeah,
I love it. Genius.
And then I'm like, so I start the live and I'm like panicked because I realized, people are going to like walk through the kitchen. I'm sitting in the kitchen, like in the middle of everything. I'm like, people are going to see me doing this and think that I'm a freak, but it's okay. We move on. It's okay. And then after that, go to lunch, come back. Usually the press briefing is like mid-afternoon, like 2-ish, and they'll call like a lunch lid. So nothing will be happening during the lunch lid. We'll be like, except for everybody's supposed to go eat and like take a little break. And then, so after the press briefing, I'll take notes, type up some like notes to myself, like what I need to do, try and like plan out an article. And then typically I go home, edit a TikTok together, figure out like my posting plan for social, and then try and write an article that night. But Andrew, my boss, like he's like, we need an article from you. I'm like, but I like the TikTok stuff better. So
yeah.
How do you decide what to cover? Because I'm sure like a press briefing has a lot of different things that are being spoken about, a lot of different topics. How do you nail down that topic?
So I will basically write a question for everything that's going on at that time. And then whatever gets answered, like I'll pick what I want to cover and put that as like my number one like question. But if I don't get called on, or if like another question gets answered, or a question that's similar to my first question gets answered, then I'll just go with that. So it kind of depends on like what's asked and what Korean answers and like how much I like the answer. You know what I mean? Like, because I want to like what I'm writing about, but if it's obviously really newsworthy, then I'll go with that. Like the day that way back when Brittany Griner was sentenced, I believe, like that was one. There was a few huge stories that day, but like I went with that one because I felt like it was focused on the most at the briefing. So yeah, it really depends on how the briefing goes and what's going on that day.
Totally. All so interesting. Well, back to the hand raising of it all. I know, don't want to trigger you, but tell us a little bit more just about how these briefings really function. And do you always get a chance to ask a question, or is there kind of a like seniority in the room? Can you kind of like break that down of just the dynamics of being in there and how it all functions?
Totally. And this is like what I find the most interesting about the briefing room, just because I never knew this before. And I feel like it's not really like talked about. But the front row of the briefing room is like CNN, Fox, NBC, Bloomberg, AP, maybe like one or two more, but they're like major networks. So usually the press secretary will defer the first question to AP because they're like literally just getting the news out. They're not like biased any which way. So they get the first question. I don't know how that was established like in the first place. Like I don't know when that became a thing.
The press. So
yeah, exactly.
Take the title.
Top of the alphabet too. And then after that, like Korean will usually go like hit the first row first, but she does make a good effort to get to like the middle of the seats and then the back. I'd say she'll typically give like 1 to 2 questions to people in the back, which in a 45-minute briefing, like that's pretty good, especially because people ask a lot of follow-ups, which is also, I didn't know that either. Like I thought you had one question, that was your question, but like I guess actually during COVID, I kind of realized this because there was so much back and forth with Trump and all of the reporters. But yeah, people will follow up for like a good 5 minutes sometimes. So I do not get to ask questions every single time. It is really difficult when you're in the back, especially because from the administration standpoint, like they want the people who are going to get the most out to the most amount of people. And that's obviously going to be the first row. So yeah, but they are like Korean makes it known that there is like a direct line of access to her if you have any issue, like really pertinent question or something like that. She'll say in a briefing like, hey, if you need me, like my office is right there, like you know you have our info. So that's good that she does that, I think, just from like a transparency standpoint. But yeah, that's typically how it works. It's kind of the shit show. Everything's just really frenetic and crazy, but it's wild.
That is crazy. Yeah. What is like the craziest thing that you've witnessed? Has there been any like major dramas that have gone down?
Yes. So far I'd say nothing super out of the ordinary. I mean, Korean always kind of gets into it with Peter Doocy or the Fox correspondent, which makes sense because they're on opposite sides, obviously politically. And she gets like kind of like noticeably frustrated, which I mean, that's been every press secretary like on planet Earth. But I feel like either it was like a month ago or 2 months ago, there was this group of, I don't even know who they were working for, but I had never seen them before. There was like probably 4 or 5 of them. They had like a DSLR camera. And they were just kind of like walking around, and they were like older, like middle-aged men. And one of them sat like in a seat in the back row, kind of probably like second to last row. And he's like basically like out of his seat, like raising his hand every single time, which you got to do what you got to do. But it's coming to like the last 2 questions of the briefing, and Korean calls on somebody, like she clearly called on somebody 2 rows in front of him, like kind of like in that line where he was, but it was obviously not to him. He just like starts talking over the person that she actually called on, and like she literally was like kind of like communicating with her eyes with the guy she actually called on. She was like, okay, like go for it, you go off, dude.
She didn't like yell at him?
No, that's what I was surprised about, because that's the thing I feel like with the press secretary right now. I feel like she's still kind of new, learning how to like handle the briefing room, which totally is an insanely difficult job.
Mhm.
But I feel like if it was Jen Psaki, she would have been like, no, like
Shut
not
the
you.
fuck up.
Like, yeah, literally. So, I mean, that's just a testament though, as to like how nice she is. And like, I think she's a really like, she tries to be really friendly and helpful. But
Level-headed,
I was
yeah.
like, what are you doing? Like, I don't think he would have done that if it was a man, like a man press secretary. So,
Yeah. Well, I wonder
I don't
too,
know.
like, given, I don't know, Jen Psaki too was like the post-Trump where the press briefings were pretty aggressive, I would say,
Yeah,
and,
totally.
you know, snarky in ways as far as just like they're just all battling it out kind of. So I wonder if it was like Jen Psaki was just the perfect kind of transition period because, you know, Joe Biden's just like very bipartisan all the way. And like maybe he's like, okay, maybe Jen Psaki can like transition us out of that Trumpian era with all of his crazy press secretaries. And then now like we have someone who can like make things normal again, make things more level-headed.
Totally.
Like, you know, it's just interesting to think about those
Yeah.
dynamics. But
Absolutely.
I'm also curious too, has Joe Biden ever come in when you're there? Does that even happen? Like,
It does like that's a thing. Presidents, obviously, you guys, I'm sure know that like presidents do sometimes go to the briefings like Trump did during COVID. I think I have like war flashbacks from COVID. I wasn't even there. I'm like, oh my God. Like,
no, so we were
it's
all
dramatic.
watching it for the first time. Like everyone watched press briefings in the White House like every day.
But yeah, like now, I don't know if he's been to one that I can think of. Definitely not while I've been there. Like in person there for a briefing. They did have Dr. Fauci. I missed this, but Dr. Fauci was there a few weeks ago for his retirement.
He's
but
retiring.
No, I know. Isn't that crazy?
Go rest.
I know, literally. Like, enjoy your life, dude.
Seriously.
Please.
That is just the exhaustion. But also he hits me as one of those people that just he will be running in his grave. Like
absolutely.
But he's just like dealt with so much bullshit. And I've always felt so bad for him. And he's like, why are people threatening my literal wife? Like I'm just a doctor. Help.
Yeah.
Wait, I also had a question too. Do you ever go to the White House for events like today he's signing like the marriage equality bill? Like, do you ever do stuff like that as well and report on those events?
Yes. So though this one, I believe he signed outside. I don't know.
It looks like the event was outside. Yeah.
Yeah. But typically like a lot of those events are inside, like in one of the staterooms, some sort of important setting, and space is a major problem. So it is harder to get credentialed for those events. So like you can have your press pass and everything, but still not necessarily get like a specific credential to an event like that. You have to like submit in time for them to like go through everybody. So I have not actually like been there just because I'm in school and everything. I haven't been there regularly enough to like try and make it to one of those. I did try to make it to the medal, the Freedom Medal. What was it? The one that
Medal of Honor? Is that a thing?
It's like I can't think of the name.
Oh,
the Presidential
one
Medal
recently?
of Freedom.
Was it the one recently where they didn't shake like McConnell's hand? Was that one?
No, that is a different medal, but I forget the name of that. There's so many medals. This one was in like July or August, I think. And there wasn't space, so I couldn't go to that one, which is really sad. But like hopefully over the summer when I'm there like a little more regularly again, I'll be able to get to one of those. But like today would have been a perfect opportunity because outside there's typically not space issues. So
yeah, true.
I was super curious like what the differences were between sort of like a signing moment and its own sort of press, I guess, vibe that it has.
Yeah.
Versus press briefing, I guess like event versus like regularly occurring event or whatever. But
yeah,
I am also curious in terms of like, okay, you're saying that people are credentialed. Has anyone ever gotten their credentials knocked? Like, could you get kicked out of the press briefing room?
You It is actually really difficult to remove. Like if you have a hard pass, like the permanent one,
Yeah.
that is incredibly difficult to take away. I mean, you can have it taken away. I forget Jim Acosta during Trump got his taken away. I don't know if you guys remember that, but like
Now that you say that, it's like coming back to me.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that is just really unheard of because you go through like vetting, you have to go like meet with the Secret Service to get it. So the fact that it was taken away, that was wild. I'm sure with like day-to-day passes, like it's probably a little more normal to have them taken away. But like, yeah, the only time I've heard of a hard pass taken away was that time. I don't know what happened. Like there's things that happen like that are more low-key. It's not like a national correspondent. It's like somebody behind the scenes, but yeah, it's wild.
So wild. Well, such an interesting role, truly. Can you also, like, as we wrap up, kind of tell people too, like, how you show this work on TikTok, like where they can find you and like what your content there is like? Because I think it's so interesting for people.
Yeah. So my on TikTok is M with the pink bedroom because when I lived at home, my bedroom was hot pink. And then I started making TikToks more seriously and I just kept the name. So that's where you can find me. My videos, I do a mix of stuff, I'd say. My favorite thing to do is day in the life of a White House correspondent. I just will film everything that I do in a day, put it into a video and voice it over. I also will do, if there's an event at the White House, like I just went to see the Christmas decorations. I guess it was like right after Thanksgiving. It was so much fun. So that I just did kind of like a tour of what was inside, what it looked like, rather than I also did a day in the life, but I did that as well. So yeah, it's just kind of that sort of thing. I also have some law school content on there. If there are any law student listeners. And yeah, but my goal is just really to let people into the White House and see what it's like, because I feel like a lot of correspondents, they are obviously focused on giving the news, which I am too, but I also want it to be accessible to people, because you cannot get behind something that you don't understand or be a proponent of it. And with the state of the world right now in our country, I just think that is one thing that we can do to teach people civics a little bit more. It's just to know what's going on in one of your most important governmental buildings. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's so cool to give that access and that behind the scenes. I've never seen that. And especially given that the people who you think of that do the work you do, are the Peter Duceys of Fox and CNN. And you see that work, and that seems so out of reach, out of touch as far as day to day. But to see, that access from your point, and especially someone so young doing the work, it's, I think, really cool for people to see. So thank you for sharing your world with us. Is there anywhere else people can find you? Anything else you want to plug?
Yeah, we're also, I'm on Instagram at Barkann, and also I direct a program for students to help teach them how to become political correspondents. So they write articles for our news organization, which is called AKSM News. And I think you can go to, I think it's aksmmedia.com if you want to see anything that I have written. That's where I'll post articles. That's where they post articles. Yeah, there's a lot of news. We try to get it up pretty quickly after things break. And yeah, we're working on trying to get more of a live show going within the next few months. So definitely check there. Yeah.
Cool. Amazing. Well, we definitely will. And thank you so much for chatting with us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.